The Deputy County Counsel, Elizabeth Cable. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Okay, first let's do introduction of new employees by the Board of Supervisors, and I think we'll start with our CAO.
Well, we have an introduction. He isn't necessarily our new employee, but I'd like to introduce Interim Chief of Police for Crescent City, Scott Berry. And if Scott could come up and just say hi, that would be nice.
Good. Welcome, Scott. Welcome. Chief.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity to come and say hello and introduce myself on Roger's invitation. I thank you. Excited to be here, and I know the importance of city and county, especially in law enforcement, working together, and I've already talked to Sheriff Wilson and met him, and I like the atmosphere we have up here. We'll keep going forward, and it's a good atmosphere, and like we talked about before, we're small enough that we have to work together to make things happen properly, and just happy to be here, and thank you very much for this opportunity to come and say hello to the board.
Appreciate it.
Welcome. Thank you.
Welcome. You might not be an employee of the county, but you're certainly an employee of the community. So
the community.
Appreciate it.
Exactly
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you very much for the time.
Any other introduction of new employees? Heidi.
Yes, I'm pleased to announce we have filled the newly created Road Assistant Superintendent position. Richard Mello began working with us in mid-May, and he's here today. He actually worked for the county in the road division over 10 years ago, and we're very happy to have him back.
Richard, welcome.
Yes. Good to be back. I left for a while, and now I'm back, and it's good to be back.
Welcome back.
Good. Welcome. Anybody else? No? Okay. How about any reporting any actions out of closed session? Council?
Nothing to report.
All right. This time the chair is going to request any additions, deletions to the agenda at this time. In order to have an item placed on the agenda, it will have to have arisen subsequent to posting the agenda and require action prior to our next agenda. Is there any such item? No? Okay. So we'll go ahead and receive brief reports or announcements relative to county business. Supervisor Gitlin.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, a pleasant good morning to everybody, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Take a Bite Out of Blight program. We'll soon be partnering up with our probation department. Individuals who find themselves with community service hours to fulfill will soon have the opportunity to put those hours to excellent use by helping beautify many of Del Norte County neighborhoods by picking up trash and other debris that stigmatizes so many of our neighborhoods in Del Norte County. And it's called the Community Work Service Program. I'll be meeting with Helen Setnar, Supervisor of the Community Work Service Program, and Director of Probation Lonnie Raymond, to understand the details of how the program works. The benefits of those participating in helping clean up our community throughout the county are quite obvious. It's a win-win for Del Norte County. Last week I attended a planning meeting for the hugely successful Sea Cruise Car Show scheduled for October 10th and 11th. I hope everybody will make their plans to be a part of this great annual event. It was my honor and privilege to help dedicate the cornerstone of the rebuilt Masonic Lodge 45 and deliver remarks as the keynote speaker last week. Since 1853, this exceptional fraternal organization has helped make Crescent City and Del Norte County a better place to live, thanks to all the Masons, and especially Lodge Master John Pricer for all of your wonderful contributions. Lodge 45 will host many events starting next in September into the future. I attended a future facilities meeting with the tax collector's office, and it's moving forward in implementing some new security measures which will benefit the public and raising the standard to 21st century levels. Last week I enjoyed the fair for 4 days, volunteering at the Del Norte Solid Waste Authority booth, along with the Del Norte County Republican Party and the Del Norte County Tea Party booths. It was a great event, and I'm sure you've heard, a very successful one indeed. Also last week I met with Interim Director of Del Norte County Solid Waste Authority to set the agenda for tomorrow's solid waste meeting and to discuss the August 21st workshop on options for the R3 consulting report. At tomorrow's meeting, commissioners will vote to have council explain the legal ramifications of each of the 4 options listed on the R3 consultant's report. Highly respected facilitator Terry Supahan will conduct the strategic options workshops next week. The meeting will be held at the Fire Hall on Washington Boulevard, 2 o'clock, Thursday, August 21st. Last chance grade discussion is in the news again. I've learned from Del Norte County Local Transportation Director Tamara Layton that a special meeting will be held next week in Smith River to discuss what's called methodology, which is population weighted to determine if last chance grade qualifies for federal grant monies. I'm a little bit skeptical of any population-based study for obvious reasons, since we don't have a great deal of population up here in Del Norte County, but certainly a solution has to be found for the precarious spot on Highway 101. This priority should and continue to remain finding an alternate route around last chance grade. Population should not be a major criterion in determining the ultimate fix for last chance. I enjoyed a great salmon chicken barbecue dinner at Camp Klamath 2 Saturdays ago. Congratulations to Aaron Funk and his entire crew at Camp Klamath for a great evening, music and barbecue. Check it out. It's a great place to enjoy an evening and afternoon down there. Also met on short notice with a constituent who owns property on Highway 101 and the Community Development Department. The gentleman related issues he was receiving one directive from a Coastal Commission and a conflicting directive from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. The meeting was set up with the Community Development Department to solve an ongoing blight issue, which I'm very happy to report is in the process of being corrected. Thank you to Heidi Kunstall and Randy Hooper and Dave Mason for your help in solving this issue and maintaining our beautiful community. Received a call from a constituent on Grant Street who tells me about the explosion of raccoons in her immediate area, and I'm sure this is not in any one area. It's exploding everywhere. Wildlife is abounding everywhere. It's exacerbated by many in our community stopping to feed these wild creatures. Please let me remind you, feeding of wildlife, including raccoons, is illegal, and it only makes the matters worse. I've reported the incidents about the raccoons to Department of Fish and Wildlife for appropriate intervention. And also, honored to meet Ivan Stolfus and his new tractor. Is tractoring across, I shouldn't say new one, it's a 1948 John Deere, and he's tracted across the United States, as you all know, a distance of about 3,500 miles from Atlantic to Pacific to raise funds for the Wounded Warrior Project. Ivan made pit stops at the farmer's market. General Manager Ron Phillips was there to greet him. Wounded Warrior Project partner Home Depot and store manager Alex Campbell also greeted Ivan. Project partner Home Depot and point of honor at the S-Curve and the Veterans Council members led by Sparky Countess were also there to welcome Ivan to Del Norte County, as were the police explorers and the Crescent City Police Department. I want to thank Eric Apperson for his help with the explorers. The event concluded at South Beach adjacent to the harbor, where Ivan was officially recognized by city, county, and Chamber of Commerce officials. Many thanks to all those assisting law enforcement, including Lieutenant Mike Riddell of the CHP, Del Norte Sheriff's Dean Wilson, Crescent City Police Department Chief Scott Berry, Wes White of the Harbor Commission, and the Chamber of Commerce for all their efforts in making this a momentous event in Del Norte County so special. Of course, thank you, Ivan Stolfus, who raised over $87,000 for the Wounded Warrior Project across small towns across America, including Crescent City. Appreciate your efforts, Ivan, and you are a true American patriot. And finally, it appears there will be a contested race for school board in District 1. It was an omission. It didn't quite make it into the paper. Milton Riley filed his papers and submitted more than the required signatures and will challenge Don MacArthur for the Del Norte County School Board. Though a qualified candidate must reside in the district he or she represents, voting is conducted countywide. And that's my report. Thank you.
Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yes, thank you. I had a NORTEC meeting, which, if I remember right, is the Northern Rural Training Employment Consortium meeting in Chico. There was a presentation along with the normal business, budgetary, and personnel business that we normally take care of. We had a presentation by a firm from Chico that that needed skilled workers, specifically trained in modern computerized machining equipment. And so they partnered up with a local high school and were able to train the trainers, to train the teachers in order to teach the kids how to run these sometimes multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment that there's really no training because schools can't afford to have that kind of equipment on their facility, or at their facilities. So it was pretty interesting on how they went about getting the teachers involved and were able to train these people so they could train the kids and then supply their workforce. Participated, although not very well, in the local member guest golf tournament. As Supervisor Gitlin said, we had a future facilities meeting for possible upgrades to the Treasurer Tax Collector's office. Had a Border Coast Regional Airport Authority, and I'm sure Supervisor Finnegan will elaborate on this, but we've made some great headway. We've got some items going out to bid. We can actually possibly see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel for getting started on that. I think we're making some good progress there. Had a special session for interviews for Health and Human Services Director. We had interviews with applicants. I attended the John Michael Montgomery concert at the fair, along with all the other fair activities. Bought half a steer, walked around with my granddaughter and grandson and daughter and wife and enjoyed everything going on there. As Supervisor Gitlin said, or mentioned, Mason Lodge rededication. I attended that. Went to a wedding, the Ivano Aguilar wedding. Had a healthcare district ad hoc meeting where we met the new interim CEO of Sutter Coast, Mitchell Hara. Is that right? Hannah. Excuse me, Hannah. Hannah seems to be a pretty down-to-earth guy, really impressive. I was impressed by him, and I am going to have a meeting with him later on. Had a resource conservation and development meeting, a personnel meeting on a personnel issue. Filled in for Chair Finnegan on agenda review. Had some constituent issues with elk, both dead and alive. So getting fish and wildlife involved with that. And as Supervisor Gitlin said, or mentioned about Mr. Stolzfus and his tractor, I followed the parade through town, and I was pretty impressed with him in his dedication to this cause, which I think is very noble. But I was pretty impressed with the explorers who hoofed it from Home Depot clear down to South Beach during that whole parade situation. So it was very interesting, and Supervisor Finnegan presented our proclamation, did an outstanding job, as well as Jeff Palmer and the other people from the harbor and the city, well represented. It was I think there was kids from the FFA who did a flag presentation, which was very interesting. It was well attended and a great event. Thank you.
Supervisor Sullivan.
Thank you. I had a little bit longer. I was not at the last meeting. Happened to miss that. I was out of country. Attended the Solid Waste Management meeting prior to going, local Transportation Commission meeting, attended the Gasky Raft races for those of you that got a chance to go out there. The weather was awesome out there, and Gina and Don Bowen are the main organizers on that, and the money goes to fix things on the Legion Hall. So really well attended. Got a chance to briefly be out there for that. Took a family vacation with my son, went to Ireland, got to see the great-grandfather's home, which is now walls with a tree growing through it, which was eye-opening for my 12-year-old, because he's like, what is that? And, well, you got to start somewhere. So I can tell you, you know, we really don't, even in a country as old as Ireland and an first world country, and excuse me, there's a lot of things that we still take for granted here, that we have so many amenities here, even in Crescent City, that you just don't have in certain parts of Europe. So definitely worth visiting. Folks are always nice to you. It doesn't matter who you are and where you come from, they're always nice. So definitely a worthwhile trip, and glad to get a chance to do that. Also attended the Delaware County Fair, a very successful event. Looked like it was much larger this year than last year. Be curious to see what the numbers are attendance-wise. Attended the rodeo, then also at the livestock auction, and my son happened to sell his hens there. I got to thank Helen Ferguson and the Grange for the program that they put on. The kids really, for the kids, it's quite a learning experience, so grateful for that. I got to congratulate Randy Hatfield on the Extreme Dogs activity. If any of you got a chance to see that there, these dogs flying 15, 20 feet into a pool of water was pretty cool to watch, so definitely entertaining. Also attended the special session for the second round of interviews for the Health and Human Services Director. I was not at the beginning of the ribbon cutting due to conflict schedule-wise, but did happen to go. I congratulate the Masons on their new facility, and especially on George Mayer. He put the work in, and he's the one that built it. It's a pretty impressive site if you get a chance to go and see it. Attended an ad hoc 2x2x2 with the city, county, and the healthcare district, and met Mitch Hanna, the interim CEO of Sutter. And as Supervisor Hemmingson said, it was a pretty impressive guy. He was down to earth and answered a lot of questions, and it was a pretty good conversation, I thought. Also got a chance, wasn't able to attend Saturday, but did meet Ivan Stolfus at Rotary. He made a presentation to the Noon Club. Very impressive, just the project he's been doing from the East Coast to the West Coast. Neat guy. Got a chance to, my son attended band camp, and I want to thank Sedgwick, Jones, Clancy, Ross, and I cannot remember the Brookings teacher from, music teacher from Brookings, but very well attended. It was done out at Smith River. They put a great concert in at the Smith River Gym last Friday. After that, also attended the Art and Terry McCune had a joint birthday party. If you know the McCunes, they're neat people, and it was cool to see mom and dad, or excuse me, daughter and father have a birthday on the same day. So it was cool to see the generational thing there. On kind of a sad note, attended Patty Haben's funeral service, and if those of you know the Haben clan, and I'll call them the clan because there's quite 9 siblings, they're a neat family, and she's definitely going to be missed, and we want to pass our condolences on to the family, because it was out of an auto accident at 199 that it happened, so, which coincidentally is on the agenda later. Last, attended the hunter safety course, my first one. I want to thank Steve Bigham and Robin Cosi for putting that on. It was 3 hours last night, and I got a couple more classes, but my son and I are taking it. And those of you, even if you don't hunt, it's definitely worth taking. It's a very informative class, and I'm glad I'm doing it finally. So anyway, that's it.
Good. I also had a few meetings, and we'll try not to double up on things that have already been reported on. Had a CSAC, State Association of Supervisors, Finance and Revenue Committee. We're talking about liquidating some assets, additional buildings that are a drawdown right now that would perhaps release about an additional $3 million to help offset some of the dues that is the responsibility of the county. So being a little proactive on that. We also, while we were there, had additional FPPC training, something that everybody should be looking into. Took the opportunity to stop by and visit with the Glenn County Board of Supervisors, and the reason is one of the issues that we're faced with in this county as well is the PILT payments. And it's about $600,000 owed to this county alone. The reason that the governor cited that he is not going to fund PILT is because there is a suit against the state of California for not paying it. And as long as that suit's in place, it's giving him an excuse. So we talked to Glenn County under the auspices of CSAC is more than sensitive to the rural plight. And we thought that even though people seem to think that everything that CSAC does is for LA or the urban and suburban counties, we need to find a way to talk to the governor about what's important to rural counties. Assuming that he wins, his budget in January is going to lay the groundwork for 4 years of his priorities. So we ask and are asking him, as well as his staff behind the scenes, what do you want your legacy to be for rural counties, and not just water? So we talk about fairs, we talk about Williamson Act, we talk about PILT, but we're talking about it in such a way as how can we have a win without him having egg on his face? That's especially true with the fair issue. You know, you have to find a different way to articulate it. Williamson Act as well. So that was a very good meeting where we agreed on some strategy. Met with Klamath constituents on several issues. The least of which not happens to be the Community Services District water issues in the town site. Met with Brian Dolly, who is an assemblyman from Lassen County. He was one of my predecessors at Regional Council of Rural Counties, RCRC, as the chair. He also did the Western Interstate region. He combined, even though he is a Republican, he understands what it means to work together for rural issues. He combined across the aisle with Assemblyman Chesbro on the recent timber bills, timber harvest bills. And when Assemblyman Chesbro is gone, he'll probably be looked to as the expert there. So had a great opportunity to go see a good friend and now an assemblyman. Had a chamber meeting regarding Ivan. There was a couple of those for those of us that participated and set the stage for what happened. Proactive Financial meeting, well attended. Had the airport JPA that Jerry has spoke about, and I'll just, the only other 2 cents is there was a lot of contracts that were let that now we get to pave the way to get into construction phase of the runway safety area. Originally, FAA had said they would do it on estimates, but they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't fund it now on estimates. We had to have actual bids. So we have accomplished that. Attended the interviews, as we all did, with the new health and the interviews for candidates for Health and Human Services. Met with Jim Wood, who is a candidate for the Assembly, and just a heck of a nice guy. Spent some time with him, and I know that he came up and spent time at the fair as well. Nurturing those relationships for people that you think are probably going to take that position. I also attended the Masonic Lodge dedication, very well attended. George did an excellent job in building back up from the ashes. The county fair, I think we've all talked about that, and we're going to hear probably more during public comment. CSAC officers call in, do that every Monday. Also had an executive board meeting down in Long Beach, met with Don Kanabe, who's sort of the godfather down there, and talked about rural issues and how, you know, rural's marrying there the canary in the gold mine, or the canary in the mine, albeit whatever kind of mine. Just that if we got a problem, it means they're going to have a problem too, and it's not just water. So good connections there. I was mentioned, get to present Ivan Stolfus, as it's pronounced, his plaque. Thing that struck me about Ivan is how humble this gentleman is. And it's almost ironic that there was so much grandstanding around somebody so humble and what he was trying to accomplish. Very touched by his Wounded Warrior Project and the positive effect he had on this community and we had on him. There is, somebody sent me a link, Jay, maybe you can speak to it, where he mentions Crescent City and how he really treasured his time here and enjoyed the people. Met yesterday with Margaret Brodkin and some community members, but first we met with First Five and with administration and HSS, sorry Dorothy, that regarding a children's budget, how to establish a baseline, how to see how much money we're spending on programs, not just the money for children, and what are the outcomes, and what is missing, and what do we need to do better. I'm trying to bring the focus back to this community where it belongs, was at the beginning with some of the children, how we're doing there. I also had calls regarding elk issues. I know that we had mentioned to Jay to bring it up forward on a future agenda, both dead and alive elk. You talk about raccoons, they're nothing compared to the damage the elk are doing, and it's getting worse. In fact, Jeff, I think I've had this board's asked you to put up several elk signs lately, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and the damage to property, and it's just, the economic interest there is becoming rather devastating, not to mention the health and welfare issues. With that, I'm going to ask the CAO to make a report as well.
I'll start with the elk issue. I had a field meeting with some concerned citizens regarding elk. In this case, it was primarily live ones, and depredation and some of the issues. There will be there was an invitation to the Department of Fish and Wildlife to come before the board and start that discussion regarding elk and some of the issues of not just private property depredation, but also the crossing of highways and plans and future plans and environmental documents and all of the things behind the scenes that have to go into the ultimate management plan, which at this point the state doesn't have an adopted management plan. And so I believe it's the first meeting in September that we'll have some representatives here, and we'll start that discussion. Over the last couple of weeks, we've met on the recreation side of administration to talk about some new software for scheduling for both parks as well as league scheduling to make it easier for the participants to get signed up, get paid, and hopefully in that case make it easier for us to also augment those programs, whether it be youth, adult, or teen. I attended a couple of meetings at the Chamber of Commerce for the preparation for Ivan Stolfus. Was fortunate enough to be able to go to that down at South Beach, and if you're looking at the far corner of the paper today, you'll see my daughter and me. I attended the interviews for Health and Human Services, added the ad hoc for healthcare, the healthcare district, met with the city manager about shared services, and we'll have future meetings on that also. Had miscellaneous meetings with the public regarding issues and questions. That happens almost daily. And I was fortunate enough to be at the fair for a couple of different reasons. One was to support the Smith River Athletic Boosters, which we sold corn and potatoes. And hopefully it'll be better next year. But and also to attend the bucket calf program that is put on by through 4-H with primarily Blake and Stephanie Alexander, and their kids are the leaders on that. And this is the second year that my daughter has been able to be a participant. It's an excellent program, a lot of kids. You see a lot of them out there. They're learning a lot of good traits. And so I just, if you get a chance next year at the fair, if you could stop in there and see that, it's an excellent program.
Good. A couple of things you mentioned, you're talking to constituents and whatnot. We all do, and it's very humbling, the amount of people that seek you out and come up and say, keep up the good work, persevere. One thing I did want to mention, though, part of the job at CSAC is to review and make recommendations regarding some of the propositions. And I guess what I want to say is a word of caution to people: before you vote, please research what you're voting on. Case in point is Proposition 47. It seems that if you mention water or you mention children, it gets a yes vote. And a lot of times you're not aware of what you're really voting for. There is a Proposition 47, which is going to be on the ballot, the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. How could you not vote for that, right? Well, what it would do is reclassify certain non-violent property and drug offenses, requires misdemeanor sentence instead of felony for petty theft, receiving stolen property or forging checks, misdemeanor sentencing instead of felony for certain drug possession offenses. And how they sell this is that the money that would be saved in the prison system would then be given to local mental health, drug treatment, K through 12, and victim services. Well, it's great that the money's going there, but how does that make your neighborhood safer to have felons classified as misdemeanors? So give it some thought when it comes to voting this year. And with that, we're going to go ahead to public comment. Any member of the public may address this board on any issue that is on our agenda. If you would care to wait till that item hits the agenda, you might prefer to do that, because I'm not going to recognize you twice for the same topic. And it doesn't have to be on the agenda, but just something that's under the purview of the board. Members of the public? Yes, sir. No, it's not. It's public comment. If you want to speak to an item that's on the consent agenda now, then I'm not going to have you speak at that time. This is not the consent agenda. This is for public comment for any other item.
Not listed on the agenda.
Not necessarily on the agenda. If you do want to speak to something that's on the agenda, this will be the time and not later. Okay.
My name's Don Gillespie. speaking for the Friends of Del Norte County. And before my time starts, I'd like to give you my comments.
Thanks. In the future, when people have handouts, please give them to the clerk of the board so she gets a copy and then she can disseminate it.
Okay.
Joe, time's a wasting.
Okay, so excuse me for reading this. Has my time started already?
Yes, it has.
And that can't be restarted?
You're wasting time, Joe.
Okay,
Don,
well,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
You can have that time over.
Yeah, you took up time there. Okay, so Don Gillespie of Friends Del Norte, and I want to say in regards to your resolution on SDAA access on Highway 199, I think it's important that the board and the Friends Del Norte have something in common, and that is what is best for the interests of people of Del Norte County. Traffic safety on highways 199 and 197 are important to both of us. I'm afraid that you're basing your support for Resolution 2014-34 on opinions rather than on facts. This is evidenced by the following fallacies in your resolution. Number one, you can create safer highways without including SDA trucks. Without SDA trucks, cut slopes on Washington Curve and Middle Fork Bridge would be smaller, hence less soil erosion, hence no court injunction. On the June 2010 Highway 199-197 Safe ST Access Project Report prepared by the California Department of Transportation, on page 2.1-57 and again on page 2.2-32, it states the proposed project is expected to increase the number of trucks on proposed SDA route by 92 trucks per day by 2030. 17 trucks per day without the improvements. Smith River Canyon is narrow and dangerous as it is and has an extensive history of vehicle and truck accidents, which poses not only a serious safety hazard but an ongoing potential for contamination of Smith River. You need to publicly speak to these concerns to the common motorists and the travel and tourism industry.
Joe, since your time's going to expire, it's not yet, would you have something, we can read this. Do you have something else you want to add?
Well, I need to point out that unsafe bridges are being replaced without STA access to money, and the Middle Fork, the Hardscrabble Creek Bridge is a case in point. On your resolution, last chance grade has nothing to do with SDAA trucks, and I feel like that's misleading for you to put that in the resolution. And I want to say that there's a coho recovery plan in place with considerable state and local investment that will have a greater positive economic impact on the region's economy than allowing oversized trucks to have unsafe access to local highways.
Can I ask you to wrap it up?
And lastly, I think Mr. Hemmingson should excuse himself from voting on this resolution.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Unless he explains to the public why he may not benefit from that project.
Sorry for calling you Joe. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Okay, future speakers, please adhere to the time limits.
Can I just speak to the item that Mr. Gillespie was talking about as far as Hemmingson Construction? And this is a good case in point in the way that they don't get their facts correct. I have absolutely no financial interest whatsoever in Hemmingson Construction. That belongs to my cousin. It has nothing to do with me. It has actually never had anything to do with me. But this is the kind of facts, supposed facts, that they come up with, and they put it out on paper and supposedly makes it true. It's not true. I have no financial interest in Hemmingson Construction whatsoever.
Thank you. Next, please. One of you, please. Eileen, you were standing there first. Go ahead.
You got to speak into the microphone.
Are you going to have consent agenda right following this, or?
I do not know.
Oh, okay, so I better speak now because I might not have time.
Okay.
All right. A long time has passed since the chamber gave their support in 2006 for 199, and it was a lot of people at first thought this might be a good project, understandably, that it might help the economy. However, in looking at the responses of companies that use that road, it turned out that the financial benefit to this community for local constituents is very negligible. I also know that in light of all the new information that has come forth during the environmental process to shed light on the true impacts of this project, many people, including even some lily bulb users of that road, have stated they have no interest in this project. It doesn't matter to them, that it's not important. And it didn't take very long to get this pack of signatures collected, way less than 30 hours. This is 32 pages of signatures. And one key element that the environmental community contributed is an independent safety review of what Caltrans is really doing. And they stated in their document one sentence of enlightenment for us, that we are taking mandatory safety design exceptions. That doesn't, this is what's behind that. There's a whole report behind the report. And when the people of Del Norte found out about this, they signed that petition because this project is dangerous. Caltrans hit a roadblock. They cannot fix that road with cut slopes safe enough to put trucks on this highway. So we reach out our hands to you and say, let's come up with a real safety alternative that will protect the people of this county and make that road safer. And big trucks on that highway is not the way to do that. If you want big trucks, you will have to go look for a tunnel or a cantilever or something other, which is what Caltrans used to propose, because they knew cut slopes would probably not work, and they don't. They had to take risky exemptions for our lives. And so here's Smith Engineering.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to please end.
And
your time is up.
we reach our hand out to you
Eileen.
to find a true alternative for safety. Thank
Please.
you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll say it again in a different way. There is a timer over here with a red, orange, and red
Green.
button, green, red, and orange. When it hits orange, please start to wrap up, and when it hits red, please stop. Thank you.
My name is Ted Sousa, I'm a resident of Gaskey. I wanted to speak about the trucks that we had go in the river over the past few years. In 1962, we had a creosote truck go in up at Barrow. In 1980, we had a gasoline truck go in just above Gaskey, full of gas, went down in high water, so all we got was fumes and a gas leaked in the river. In 1990, we all remember the Hiachi Bridge incident. It took us 18 months before we got our road back. In 1992, above Barrow, a beer truck went in the river, full of cans. In August of '94, at milepost 28, we had the paint spill, and that was extremely detrimental to the fishery. We lost our fish for the next few years. We didn't capture any fish and see if they were going to live or not. We just thought they were going to live. Well, 3 years later, the steelhead didn't come back, and neither did the coho we don't have a count on. In year 2000, at milepost 2530, one of Houghton's trucks with fuel, hit a sideway dump that dumps across the highway, and the people had the water out for about a month without water. In year 2006 or 7, at milepost 256, in Jed Smith Park, a transformer fell off a truck in the Clark Creek. In 2008, we had that at milepost 1130, we had 4 gallons of diesel spill there. And Caltrans did an outstanding job getting right on that thing, and no diesel got in the river, although we had to dig up our highway and replace a lot of asphalt. And the last thing we have on here was that lumber truck on 197. It spilled its load into the river. Now, we don't have any rails down there. Something has to be done to protect our river.
I'm going to ask you to end it, please. Ted?
And that's all I have on our safety of our road.
Thank you.
So if we put bigger trucks on here, we're going to have bigger spills.
Thank you, Ted. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Donald Bruce. I live in Gasky, and since we're on the subject, I have a few thoughts I'd like to say about it. First of all, I know people tend to think that having these trucks come in here will help the economy. Well, I've reviewed all of Caltrans documents, and there's no significant evidence that it's going to help the economy here. You can look at towns up and down I-5 that have direct STA access, and they have the same economic problems we do. So I think that's a red herring. I just don't believe that's true. As far as safety, that you can argue that either way, but the reality is we're not straightening any roads. We're increasing the radii by a couple of feet on a few curves. The rest of the road is still curvy and dangerous. This is not the type of road that an STA truck with a long wheelbase was designed for. These trucks were designed for 4-lane freeways or 6-lane freeways to go from the port to a terminal. My dad, when he was alive, he worked on these trucks. He was a diesel mechanic. The first time I told him that this county is planning on bringing these trucks in here, he started laughing at me on the phone. I said, "No, Dad." He said, "You got to be kidding me." I said, "No." He said, "No." You said, "I'm serious." He couldn't believe it. So I think it's absolutely insane to bring these long wheelbase trucks down these roads. They're going to overtrack. They're going to kill somebody. They're going to really hurt somebody. And what's this going to cost? Close to $30 million to widen a few pieces of the road. It just seems like that money could be used better. You take every county across this nation, if everybody was spending $30 million on a project that's not needed, what would that come to? This is probably part of the problem with this whole country. We're spending money in the wrong places. Anyway, I know we're not going to change any of your minds, but I feel passionate about this is the wrong thing to do. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Yes, good morning. I'm Donna Thompson. I live in the county. Caltrans has made some very questionable decisions in the news recently. Their 197-199 project is questionable too. You care about safety on 197-199. We all care about it. You are focusing on safety and hope that the present plans will improve safety, but how can they? Yes, the curves need to be made safer. Yes, fixing the curves that can be fixed is good, even though not all of them are fixable. But adding STAA trucks on residential 197 with so many driveways, adding STA trucks on 199 with some unfixable curves, some spots where Caltrans guidelines for 4-foot clearance are waived to 1-foot clearance, with the likelihood of SDAA drivers being unfamiliar with 199 and the reduced clearance. These are recipes for disaster. Any safety improvements to 197 and 199 will be more than canceled by the presence of SDAA trucks. Can you really approve of this ill-conceived Caltrans fiasco? Instead of approving Caltrans plans, please explore ways to get the safety work done without involving the addition of SDAA trucks. Safety on 197, 199 is not compatible with SDAA trucks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to address the board?
Good morning. I'm Doreen Bruce. I'm a 25-year resident of Del Norte County. I've come before this board multiple times over the years, and many times we've disagreed with positions that have been taken. I want to say this morning, I respect each and every one of you in your efforts to run this county in the way that you believe is best. It's hard work. You have many issues that are brought before you that are complex, and you're in very difficult positions to make the decisions that you do. I think we share a similar vision of this county where we would want it to go, and it's for the well-being of the citizens of this county and for our beautiful place. So that's a huge thing that we agree upon. This project with 199 STA truck access, this has been a project I have been working on in opposition to for nearly a decade. I feel very passionately about it. I think this type of project is wrong for these roads. Having lived in Gasky for 23 years and commuted the road for many years, and still we travel in 3 or 4 times a week into town, and the road has increasingly gotten dangerous over the years. I witness accidents personally that occur ahead of us and before us. I've assisted in people that have wound up in the river. I hear the sirens go off in Gasky on increasingly regular basis, emergency vehicles coming and going. It's almost at times on weekends, it's like living in a war zone. It's that dangerous and heartbreaking to the number of losses of people we've had in this county that personally I have known and many of you have known. The situation is dangerous. I think tying this project in allowing STA trucks to enter onto these highways by doing some minimal widening definitely is not going to make this problem solve it. My fear is that you're opening Pandora's box by allowing larger, heavier, faster trucks moving through these corridors. I don't believe that's where the problems are. The safety issues are between Gasky and other dangerous spots on the road, and I believe that there are other ways that you could address the safety. And I find it ironic that here we are, this lawsuit that poor little endangered fish are bringing this to the surface again for us to relook at where we're going. I think a lot of decisions were made early on when not all the information was out on this project, what some of the big concerns were.
Can I ask you to wrap it up, Doreen?
We have an opportunity to pause here and rethink what we want to do. Anyway, I
Thank you.
appreciate your reconsidering this.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to address the board on any item that's either on or off the agenda at this time? No? Okay. Then we're going to go to our 10:25 or 10:30 rather timed item, which is a presentation from the Chamber of Commerce. Jeff Palmer. Jeff, you still with us? Good. Welcome.
Thank you.
And good job on the Ivan Stolfus.
Thank you very much. Thank you. My name is Jeff Parmer. I'm the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitor Bureau. And to give you an update on Ivan's fundraising, as of this morning, he is over $88,000. So it's going well. He was at 83 when he came into Del Norte County. So he's done very well here. It was a great event Saturday, and I want to thank you, Dave, and also you, Jay, for your help in attending the meetings, the organizational meetings. It's one of the things I enjoy about the Chamber of Commerce is being involved in community events like this. You know, we're known for our typical events, so this was unusual, and a lot of things had to happen in a short period of time, and it did all come together. And I want to thank also Ron Gastineau. He did a great job with providing sound and also assisting in the program. Charlie Helms with the Harbor, Wes White, the Explorers, Sergeant Apperson, Ron Phillips, Scott Berry, Robin Parker and the FFA organization, the VFW, Scott Feller, and I'm probably forgetting one or two people, but anyway, there were a lot of people involved, and it did come together really nice. And I understand he was interviewed on Fox News yesterday. Unfortunately, I missed that. So we did get some national recognition for Crescent City. And I want to acknowledge that we do have two of our executive board members in the audience, our president, Linda Ging, and our treasurer and the chair of our Visitors Bureau, Cindy Vosberg.
Let me interrupt you, but in that interview, he ends it, the reporters end it by saying, well, good, because he recommends Crescent City. We're always looking for places to go. So the announcement from the newscasters were to go to Crescent City.
Good. Well, I hope they come here. We'd love to have them. I'm going to kind of give a two-part presentation. The first part will be on the Chamber of Commerce, kind of a state of the union, so to speak, on where we are with the Chamber, kind of give you an update. Because we have been working on a lot of things, especially from the membership angle. This was from 2012. It's the most recent information, and it's from Dean Runyon and Associates. They're the official organization for the Visit California Tourism Bureau. Now, in 2012, $109.6 million was spent in Del Norte County. In 2011, that was $105.5 million. So that's a 4% increase, and that ties in with the 4% increase that was in visitation. Now this is a trending chart of the direct spending from 92 to 2012. You can see it was level 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011 at about 104 million. And in 2012 went up to 110.6 million. Again, that's a 4% increase. This is visitor spending by a different type of commodity. Food service and accommodations easily outnumber all the other sectors, and the food And here again is visitor spending at the destination by hotel. And again, you can see that it was kind of level 2006 and 8, and even dropped in 2009 when we had our Great Recession. But it's now bounced back up, and we're at a 5% increase over 2011. And so if the figures that I gave you as far as our visitation in 2013 equates to spending, 2013 should be a really good year, and this should be a great year. Okay, these are the TOT receipts, again, over the years. And again, you can see it jumped in 2000. We actually have 2013 figures here, and it was an 8% increase over the previous year. And then in Del Norte County, in 2013, the TOT receipts were $343,000, and that was a 2% increase over 2012. So I think that's enough of stats and the Visitors Bureau and how we attract the next new visitor, because it's really important. One of the things is through our website, and we are redeveloping it right now, should be launching this month. Mobile and tablet, smartphone usage is really on the rise, so our new website will adapt to whatever screen a person's using. So if you have a smartphone, it'll adapt to that as opposed to a 12-inch, tablet. Pardon me. Social media is huge. We've now have a page on TripAdvisor, and our hits on that site are up 66%. Our Facebook page is now over 2,000 likes, which is a huge increase over a year and a half ago when it was about 900. We used QR codes on some of our ads to be able to track where people read the ad. And so an example of that is it's a quick read code, and so on a lot of our printed material, we will put a QR code on there. We can even code it to show where the ad was placed. When we did that in Fish Sniffer magazine, we were able to track that on our Google Analytics, showing that people came to our Explore Del Norte website through that ad in Fish Sniffer, just the way we coded the QR code. We distribute those rack cards that you have in your hands up and down the coast on 101 from Hopland to Humboldt County. We're in 158 displays there. We're in 88 displays in the southern Oregon coast from Coos Bay to Brookings, and then in another 87 displays in the Rogue Valley, which includes Ashland, Medford, Grants Pass. And we do print advertising and travel publications and maps. We also do event advertising over in the Rogue Valley for events like 4th of July Sea Cruise, Tall Ships. We do have a YouTube video that was just done for Explore Del Norte, and it's on public access TV with 1.1 million households. And that's in Portland, Vancouver, Washington, Seattle, Eugene, and Rogue Valley. And then by networking, we're a member of the North Coast Tourism Council, which does include Humboldt, Sonoma, Mendocino, and Lane counties. And so we belong to that association, and they market us primarily internationally as a fly-drive destination. Try to get people to fly in to San Francisco and then drive up the coast. Our challenge is to get them to continue north and not cut over at Arcata on 299 to go to Redding.
Have them fly to Crescent City and drive to San Francisco.
Yeah, do that. I don't know that's going to happen real quick, Dave. Yeah. We also belong to America's Wild Rivers Coast Marketing Consortium, which is 5 chambers from Port Orford, Gold Beach, Brookings, Crescent City, and Klamath. And we're involved with the Film Humboldt Del Norte Film Commission, and also Visit California and Travel Oregon, the state of Oregon's travel agency. The Triplicate and the pilot has come out with a new Go Wild mobile app. I don't know if you're aware of it, but we did participate in that program and have a presence on that, and their numbers are real encouraging. And then we have the California Outdoor Writers Association Conference coming in a month. They'll be here from September 13th to September 16th, These are travel writers, bloggers. There's a couple radio shows on the outdoors, and they'll be coming here and spending 3 days, and then we'll get a lot of publicity from press. When they had the conference in Tuolumne County, there was a full-page spread in the Sunday San Francisco Chronicle on Tuolumne County, and you can't buy that kind of advertising. So we're really looking forward to that. Any questions?
Board members?
No, I think you guys do a great job, and I think we've made a commitment to, I know as a county, we've made that commitment to investing into attracting the tourism and increasing that, because it is an important one, and it's one we figured out a long time ago we can have an immediate impact. So I'm glad to see the numbers are showing that, so keep up the good work.
Yeah, good work.
Yeah, great job, Jeff. Keep it up.
All right, thank you.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Appreciate these updates.
You bet.
All right, with that, we are going to go to the 10:45 timed item, which is a Smith River National Recreation Area update. David Palmer. No.
It's not an action item.
It was a presentation by the Chamber. He'll be happy to talk to you later if you have something relevant to tell the Chamber.
Oh, Dave Palmer, District Ranger, Smith River, NRA. First, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to come here and report out. I don't have a whole lot of new information, but I do have some project updates. I think I'll start off with, as the board probably knows, Merv George has been selected as our new forest supervisor. Merv was previously our deputy forest supervisor, and my understanding, he was born and raised on the North Coast. So I think he's very well familiar with all the issues that happens up here, and we look forward to working under his leadership. The district has two major projects in progress. The first being the Gordon Hill Vegetation and Fuels Management Project. That project is now available for review on the forest website. It's a 30-day objection process. At the end of that period, it goes to the RO for review team. You know, it looks to treat hazardous fuels on some 2,750 acres in between Big Flat and Gasky. We also have travel management. That process is ongoing. Right now, the team is currently working on all the response to comments. My understanding, there was over 800 responses, and each of them had multiple comments. So they're looking to have that completed by mid-October. On both these projects, Merv George, the new forest supervisor, will be the deciding official. So I think, you know, that's a benefit for the community, because I think Merv knows what the issues are up on the North Coast. I was talking with Lynn Wright. She's our partnership coordinator for the forest. The application period for the Del Norte and Humboldt County RAC has been extended. So she'll be coming out with additional information for that. I was looking at the spreadsheet this morning, and there's 14 vacant or expiring positions on that, and so far we've gotten 2 applications. Wow. So we'll be doing some more outreach and trying to, you know, garner some more support and more applications for that. You know, I guess I would just close out with, you know, the district is always looking for opportunities to work with the county and the community. We're, you know, phone call away, and we're open to everything. So I do appreciate the opportunity to come here and report out, and I'll try to do it more often and hopefully have new information every time I come.
I appreciate that very much, Dave, and I don't know how they do it in D.C. or in Stockton, but one way we tell whether a person is local or a tourist is it's Del Norte, not Del Norte.
Oh, okay. Apologies.
No, that's just, it's a learning experience.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions here?
I do have a question, Dave. You mentioned the Gordon Hill project, and I think the last project that we had was the Big Flat.
The Big Flat, yes.
Thinning project, which was probably close to 8 years ago. What's the next project?
We're looking at one out in the Holiday area. My understanding, there's pretty big project area, a lot of, I think there's a monastery out that way, a lot of private lands that we'll be looking to, you know, do some fuels reduction in coordination with the private parcels. That's probably a couple of years out, I think.
Well, that's my concern, is a project every 8 years in our forest, you know, we're going to burn up before we have a chance to do anything. And it's a little concerning.
I agree, and we'll be doing, you know, trying to do a better job getting projects pushed through faster. You know, right now, there's a big WKRP project that's going to happen up in the Orleans area. They got a big influx of money that goes to partnerships. And unfortunately, for the next couple of years, emphasis might shift up that way. But the district will definitely be trying to work with, you know, the local community and the county to identify new projects and try to push them through. And, you know, maybe just little projects that we can do with a CE so we can, you know, get a better turnaround time. But yeah, we're always open.
Well, and you had the little blurb on the news the other day about the Hurdy-Gurdy Creek acquisition, and how now fuels management basically was going to be available to that property and public access, and what are your plans on that? What's happening there?
You know, right now I don't know. You know, I can research it with the district and get back with you. You know, it's not on the program of work for next year.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe we do need to revisit that.
So Dave, there was another issue that came across my desk, that there was an actual project that was listed as under forestry management, a thinning project, but it's going to be curtailed because there is too much biomass, too much of a fuel load on the forest, and you're afraid of forest fire, when the reason for the management was to reduce the risk of fire. Well, you're chasing your tails.
I agree. You know, and like you said, you know, we're curtailing projects because we're afraid of the biomass.
So how are we going to get rid of the biomass if we're afraid of doing projects because there's too much of it?
You know, and I wish I had a good answer for that right now. We'll definitely, you know, Merv is really looking forward to working with the communities to address this problem, as in, you know, the article last week in the triplicate. You know, he's very concerned about hazardous fuel reductions and getting these big forest fires. So,
well, and I appreciate it, and I know we have a new regime coming on, including yourself, and it'll take you a while to get caught up to speed, but these are some of the issues that maybe you could look into. And
oh, yeah, definitely.
Good.
Yeah, we will do that.
Dave, I just want to say welcome, and I hope your visits to our Board of Supervisors will be perhaps even on a monthly basis. We have a lot of issues, and I don't want to have you put on the spot. This is your first visit. I want to welcome you back, but perhaps we can set up some perhaps 2x2 meetings where we can prioritize some of these issues. Issues such as we're in a most severe drought we've had in history, and if we have these issues prioritized, then we can address them when Mr. George gets on board. But I welcome you here, and we'd like to discuss these issues in a setting which will then, when you come back here, we can find real solutions to real answers.
Okay. Definitely, yeah. We look forward to
Thank you.
working with you.
Dave, I want to also welcome you, and we do have a 2x2 already set up with you guys, I believe next week. So just something I would really encourage you, we've gone, as you know, the saga, I'll call it the saga, of the travel management plan that continues to go on for over a decade now. There was a facilitated meeting. There were different results than what Mary Kay came up with as her plan. So I would encourage you to look at those results. We were much closer to some kind of definitive solution on it. And for some reason, your predecessor went a completely 180. So I'd like to see that. I would encourage you to take a look at it, because obviously you probably, as the new guy on the block, want to get this done. And I'm glad to hear Merv George is stepping into that thing, and look forward to working with you both. And obviously, if we can get, you know, a little more communication going back and forth, that would be awesome. So welcome to Delmar County. I'm glad you got your pronunciation down correct. So
appreciate it, and maybe, you know, next week, because Merv is going to be up there on Tuesday with us. So
cool.
Definitely we can bring it up.
Okay.
Dave, thanks very much. And again, to reiterate, the board does have committees it appoints. We do have an established 2x2 we have for years, and the 2x2 committee members that works at the direction of the board is Supervisor Hemmingson and Supervisor Sullivan.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, it looks like we're out of timed items, so let's go ahead and take up the consent agenda. Can I get a motion on the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Board members, you want to comment now, or you want to go to public comment on it?
I'm good at public.
Okay. Any member of the public wish to comment on any item that is on the consent agenda at this time?
I think.
No, you did already. If it's regarding this. Excuse me. I was quite clear that if you spoke on an item that was on the consent agenda, that you spoke at that time rather than this time. And is it a different item? No. Thank you. Public comment.
Chris Howard, resident of Hiuchi, and also manager at Alexander Dairy. We oftentimes weigh big items. In this case, we're weighing a big item, again today, Highway 199, a widely supported project by the community of Del Norte. I know we've all been deeply involved with this as a project that will definitely help support not only our economy, but also safety improvements to the highway. It's critical that this project get done, not just for our current generation, but our future generations. It will have a significant economic impact on our businesses, including Alexander Dairy and those future businesses that we have not realized here. It also have a significant impact on the future of our visitation to Del Norte County. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever way you look at it, things will get done on this highway, and they'll be done in a way that's sensitive to the environment. But most importantly, our environmental footprint that we leave behind as Alexander Dairy, for example, will reduce the number of loads that we carry into this county via hay, via grain, because we now have the ability to put more tonnage on a truck. That reduces our environmental footprint. It reduces the impact of the Smith River and our potential for an accident. But those kind of considerations need to be taken into consideration, and more importantly, they need to be expressed to everybody in this community, and all stakeholders need to work cooperatively together to come to some resolution, because this item is critical to our community, and we can't afford to lose those resources that are so valuable to Del Norte. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member of the public wish to speak on this item? No, then I'll, Tamara, did you?
I'm Tamara Layton. I'm the Executive Director of the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission. And this project, where we are right now, represents over 20 years of hard work and planning by our Local Transportation Commission, our elected officials, and the Del Norte community. The restrictions that we have on the highway right now are 32 years old. I had just graduated from high school, oh my goodness, when these restrictions went into place when the federal law was passed, 32 years old. The bridge that we're attempting to replace is 89 years old. It was built in 1925. It is in the top 1% of the oldest bridges on the state highway system. The case right now is dismissed, but the injunction is still in place because of perceived deficiencies in the environmental documents. These aren't perceived impacts, these are deficiencies in the documents themselves. So there seems to be some confusion on behalf of some folks about where we are in this process. The Transportation Commission, through the Regional Transportation Plan and through the meetings that we have, most often monthly, have given me direction to do it until it's done. Not to do it until it's difficult or do it until it's inconvenient, but to do it until it's done. And I intend to work on this project until it's done. If the Board of Supervisors ever would like an update on this project through the Transportation Commission or through me directly, please don't hesitate to call. I'm absolutely willing to give a presentation and an update anytime you request it. I'd also like to encourage the other folks who are in the room here to speak on this topic to step up and do so. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tamara, just to clarify, the The leadership of this is actually through the Joint Powers Authority of the Local Transportation Commission, correct?
Right. The Local Transportation Commission is a 3+3 group set in statute by the state of California. So that's the City Council and the County Board of Supervisors together.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions?
Well, Tamara, I think, I don't know if people in the community understand how much more this project's going to run now because of this bogus lawsuit that was filed. What would you say the minimum, what would you guess the minimum range that we're looking at?
Well, the costs that we've incurred to date are $9.4 million. These costs are at risk right now. The total corridor costs are approximately $33 million. The project is at risk of being run out of time, thus run out of money, because we have timely use of funds mandates on our funding. So from the time a project receives its money until the time is built, it seems to be an environmental strategy is to not win on the basis of the environment, but to run us out of time and thus run us out of money. So that's where the project is to date.
We saw this with the Army Corps of Engineers in Willits recently.
It's very similar to the environmental strategies that are happening throughout the Lake, Mendocino, Del Norte areas.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, Baird Rumiano. I live in Hiuchi, North Bank Road. We've been operating a cheese factory here for 4 generations, approximately 85 years. And luckily enough, we have never had an accident on 199, and we have probably driven millions and millions and millions of miles on that road. It's very important to us to have that artery open, and also the artery that heads south for the last chance grade, which is also very, very important. But like I said, 199 is very, very important to Rumiano cheese, and we do hire 50 people in this county with a I think the average over there is about $48,000 a year per employee. So, and we're also building a brand new lactose plant too, that you'll be seeing going up here over the next few days. And we add a lot of, I think, interest to this community because not every town has a little cheese factory in it. I guess it's not so little anymore, but anyway, yeah, no, I would like to make sure we can maintain that 199 in a safe and good manner. Thanks.
Thanks, thank you. Next, please.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Hartwick. I live on Turnbull Lane in Crescent City. I'm here to express support for the resolution to move forward with the 199 project. From a couple different perspectives. One is representing many of the clients that provide jobs in this community, many of the larger employers that will obviously be using that road for transportation of product in and out of the community. Also backtracking all the way to the early 90s when we were asked at a different time to look at the year 2020 and express what was going to be, how we're going to get there, how we're going to get jobs for the people growing up in this community. Obviously the projects that were identified then are consistent with projects that were identified much later. The harbor, the airport, the sewer system, 199, broadband unfortunately was not really a topic of the early 90s. We weren't that far ahead of things. The Council of Economic Advisors, as appointed by the Tri-Agency Economic Development Authority, is supported by the county, city, and harbor. All support and continue to support the plan of has199.com. That includes a very robust transportation system. We continue to be looking for, and we'll be looking for, increases and changes in that overall plan. But 199 and its improvements is integral to that process. It's part of a larger process. It's not identified as the one. It's part of a system to create jobs in this community. As an individual and continuing to express the support of the Council of Economic Advisors, the 199 project is incredibly important. I don't discount the feelings and emotions that are brought before you today by other people. I think they're valid feelings and emotions and should be heard. But I do express from the perspective of economic development that that project is critical to this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Blake Alexander with Alexander Dairy. I wanted to offer maybe a little different perspective. I don't think that this Well, I'm in support of the process of changing 199 and improving it and upgrading it. Absolutely in favor of it. And the reason, I don't think it's necessarily to bring in larger trucks. The wheelbase is going to change slightly, is about the only deal. The trucks are still going to weigh 80,000 pounds. They're going to roughly have 50,000 pounds of product on them. And so I don't even believe that the average person out here, including me, is going to notice the difference in the trucks that will then be able to come in here legally. And the reason I point this out is we moved about 3,000 ton of hay last year from Idaho and Utah. I say last year, but it was last winter. It was really this year, February and March. And that's 120 loads that we had to haul into Klamath Falls, Oregon, which was a real pain, on big trucks, and then transfer them onto our smaller trucks to come over here. Those smaller trucks are then carrying 80,000 pounds as opposed to 105,000 pounds. That's not the difference that we're talking about. I will still have to do that process. What we're talking about is stopping trucks, or the trucks that are currently being stopped are, I don't know who they're owned by, but I know that we, Rumiano Cheese, Alexander Dairy, might have a couple of truck changes or trailer changes in the future that would allow us to run a wheelbase that's a foot or two longer. And that would be a benefit, because now I can go find trailers more easily, and I don't have to get this special exemption trailer that's unique and uncommon. So what's happening, the part I want to tell here is 2 weeks ago I get about 10 phone calls one day from a poor trucker stuck in Gasky or Hyuchi. And I don't know who he is. He doesn't know who I am. But he's calling because the month before another guy got stuck there in an oversized truck. So they're already coming in. They're just getting caught, or they're not getting caught. And I don't even know what he's hauling. I don't know either of these companies. I've never heard of them before, but they know me because the officer who pulls them over suggests, call these guys. I think they can help you. So then we send up a truck to hook onto this trailer, a legal truck, to pull them out and move them down here to 101. And I couldn't help the guy 2 weeks ago. And the truck that I had that's qualified is en route hauling 2 loads of grain that day from Medford to Ferndale and Medford here. And I just couldn't help him. The next day he's still calling. Then his dispatch is calling. And then the day after that, it was just, I really felt for the guy, and I don't even know who he is. His English was poor, but his dispatchers, 2 of them called, and they're from another state, 254. I don't even know where that phone number comes from. But this is what's happening. It's already happening. These trucks are coming legal or illegally in here, and you know, we need to put a stop to it. We need to make it legal for them to get in and get out. And so it's that simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Anybody else wish to speak on this topic? Okay, then we're going to bring it back to the board for discussion. There's already a motion on the floor of the consent agenda, so let's discuss the entire consent agenda. Jerry?
Yeah, I'm glad that Blake brought that up because I've heard this come up before, that the trucks are larger, heavier, faster. You know, that comes up, and that's not the case. They're longer. The trucks are longer. They can't haul any more weight than the shorter trucks. They can't legally, anyway, they can't legally go faster. They're not wider. They can't be any wider than legally is allowed. The only difference is they're a longer truck. That's the only difference.
Supervisor Sullivan, you have something?
Oh, well, let go. You know, I'm listening to you, Mr. Alexander, and Mr. Rumiano, who are employers, people, and providing jobs to people in our community. This is an issue of commerce, and there is a greater good here. I don't discount some of the concerns we have by some of the people of Friends of Del Norte who want to make this project go away, but it's clear to me that without fixing these roads, and there's some dangerous parts on 199 and 197, primarily 199, it's going to hurt Del Norte County. So I'm in support of this. I know there are a lot of employers who are providing lots of jobs, and they'll be hurt by this, and that disturbs me. So having said that, I thank you, gentlemen, for coming and telling us your feelings, and I concur with you. Thank you.
You know, I think for the public's edification on this, the main point that the judge is thinking on right now really has to do with the replacement of the bridge and the sediment, and more has to do with the consultation between Caltrans and NIMS. That's really what it is. So the argument is that the fish are going to be impacted. And the question I have for these groups, particularly the Friends of Del Norte, there were 3 major bridge projects on South Fork Road. You said nothing. Those were all replaced. You said absolutely nothing. Major sediment disturbed there. I've got my own idea as to why you said nothing. It has something to do with your president had his house on that road. But I think I think the hypocrisy is huge here. Second thing, Mr. Gillespie and Mr. Souza, who just spoke earlier, both sat on the community advisory team at the beginning of this project 4 years ago. And in fact, we're using, for the public's knowledge, we're using Mr. Gillespie's bridge design in the project. I mean, it's incredibly ironic that you're opposed to the project and we're using your bridge design in the project. And I do want to thank Mr. Souza for pointing out all the accidents on 199, 197, because that does help relay the importance of making the safety improvements on 199, 197. I mean, you've got garbage going every day on that highway right now that we ship out. We transfer to White City. Those familiar with solid waste know that we've got to ship most of our waste over to White City. I have not heard one complaint about those trucks going over. And I'm not even going to bring up the toxic waste being shipped from Humboldt County to White City right now over 199. Boy, if one of those trucks goes in the river, well, where are you guys on that? You haven't said anything. And, you know, I guess the questions that need to be answered is how many of you actually depend on the local economy for a paycheck? Not taxpayer funded, but an actual paycheck from the local economy.
Mike, bring it back.
Okay, anyway, I'm extremely frustrated with this whole project. You've cost this community millions of dollars, and I'm talking just on this project. I want to bring up all the other projects. But I think if you're really concerned about the community, you would get behind the project and actually support it, because it is going to make it a safer highway in the community and give us a better economy in the process, so it gives opportunities for our children to come back here and get a job that will depend on the local economy.
Okay. 2 cents worth. There's 18 items on the consent agenda. Item number 7 is the one that everybody seems to be focusing on. My 2 cents is, you know what? It's a safety project. And if the criteria is based on the adding a couple of feet to a truck, then so be it, if that's where the funding is. That's a dangerous road. If you're going to be widening it in any way, it makes it safer for us, for our school buses, for our Winnebagos, for the guy with the Winnebago towing a car and a boat. There is no way that it cannot benefit the community on a safety basis, and you've heard from the commerce side. So I'm going to ask to poll the vote, please.
Supervisor Gatlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Sullivan?
Yes.
Chair Finnegan?
Yes. With that, we have some budget transfers items.
Got a resolution to read too.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, let's hold off and let's read the resolution, start with number 7, and then we'll take number 14.
Okay, resolution number 2014-034, a resolution of the County of Del Norte endorsing safe STAA access on California State Route 197 and U.S. Highway 199 from U.S. Highway 101 to Interstate 5. Whereas the 197-199 corridor, California State Route 197 and U.S. Highway 199, is the sole interregional and interstate route linking Highway 101 to Interstate 5 at Crescent City, California. And whereas the current alignment and physical constraints have restricted common truck access based on the 1982 Surface Transportation Assistance Act, STAA, route designation standards, and whereas the 197-199 corridor is the Del Norte and Border Coast region's only reasonable access to Interstate 5, which is a major interstate route that holds considerable interregional importance to Northern California and Southern Oregon, and is key to the safety and economic vitality of Del Norte County. And whereas Del Norte County has long been dependent upon the 199-197 corridor for the movement of essential goods and services, for access to health care and access to the travel and tourism industry, and whereas the only alternate route for entering or leaving the region is Highway 101 that is threatened by a significant and active landslide at Last Chance grade to the south of Crescent City, and whereas the Del Norte County past, present, and future allocations of state transportation funding sources have been dedicated to the 199-197 Safe STAA Access Project, the project includes replacing a functionally obsolete bridge that was built in 1925 and is in the top 1% of the oldest bridges on the state highway system. And whereas a lawsuit and court-ordered injunction now threatens the project and the community's investment into it. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County of Del Norte does officially endorse and support safe STAA route access on 199, 197, 199 corridor from the U.S. Highway 101 to Interstate 5 in Del Norte County, California. Passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors in the County of Del Norte, California, this 12th day of August, 2014, by a unanimous polled vote.
Thank you. And item number 14.
This is a proclamation honoring the 15th Annual Farmers Market Week. Is this, am I in the right one?
Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't 14, but go ahead.
Okay. Whereas the Farmers Market of Crescent City, which is a program of Rural Human Services, and the Wednesday Downtown Farmers Market, a program of the Business Improvement District, encourages the public to purchase produce and gifts items locally. And whereas grassroots businesses such as those that participate in the Crescent City Farmers Market are important to our local economy and encourage good health, and whereas farmers markets are important outlets for agricultural producers nationwide, providing them with increased opportunities to meet consumer demand for a variety of fresh, affordable, convenient, and healthful products sold directly from the farm, and whereas farmers market play a key role in developing local and regional food systems that support the sustainability of family farms, revitalize rural communities, and provide opportunities for farmers and consumers to interact. And whereas the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte recognizes the myriad benefits of farmers markets for producers and consumers and is fully committed to supporting farmers markets' continued success through grants, technical assistance, directories, and more. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, to further awareness of farmers markets' contributions to American life, the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte do hereby proclaim its recognition and appreciation for the Farmers Market of Crescent City and further recognize the week of August 3rd through 9th, 2014 as National Farmers Market Week, passed and adopted this 12th day of August 2014.
Thank you. That was item 8 on our agenda. If you have somebody here to receive that?
I think Ron probably is.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Supervisor Gitlin for bringing this to your attention and for the rest of the board for voting it in. I'd also, as the farmers market manager for the RHS program, I'd like to also introduce my counterpart who runs the Wednesday program, Amy. Go ahead, Amy.
I too appreciate your support. The downtown Crescent City Farmers and Artisans Market has really grown, and we've appreciated your support throughout, and we thank you on behalf of BID as well as all the vendors. This is Tracy Fansler, who's also a co-manager with us.
I'm the treasurer for BID, and I just wanted to thank you for the award. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Go ahead, Ron.
In final, I'd just like to say it was brought to my attention last week, and I had never thought of it this way, that we have a strip mall that appears every Saturday morning on the fairgrounds property. We, 12 years ago when we took over, I think we had 8 vendors, 9 on occasion, and as of this year, we're running 55 to 60 vendors a week with all kinds of different produce and also food items, jewelry, photography. Yeah, Amy does the photography. Beautiful stuff. So if you need a postcard, and if you've read the Triplicate, and I know you have, there's been a number of articles in there outlining what goes on. And one of the things that I've talked to our new supervisor about is the ability to make land available for new people that want to get into produce growing. We need to, right now we only have one farm that really has any acreage to be able to grow the things that we can grow here in Del Norte County. And we at the markets try to encourage any young folks coming in, because the average age of a farmer now is about 62. And so we really need to start finding younger people to come into it, love it as much as everybody else does, but they need financial support, you know, whether it's through a loan or whether it's through back like the tri-agency used to do, a micro loan to help them get them started. So that's something that I would like to see the board work on, maybe within, well, I think it's more of a board because the land would be larger pieces, not downtown or in the city. So something in maybe the next couple of years that we could work on. So thank you, Dave.
Well, I appreciate your advocacy, Ron, and your team there. You do a great job, and maybe you can check in on, in the past, I know we had some community gardens in Klamath. I know there's one at the Wellness Center. I know when I sell property to people, one of the things they look for is enough room to have a garden. You know, my daughter has one.
Right.
So it is something that is of concern. I'm not sure, you know, what role the board would play other than advocacy.
Well, if we ever have the tri-agency again, you know, up and running,
yeah,
that could be a program there that they could work on. You're right, and we do. There is a farmer's market trying to be established in Klamath, using a lot of local people that live up there. The Yurok tribe got a big grant a couple years ago to put in community gardens, and so we're trying to encourage those, and the same thing with Gasky, that we're trying to get something going there. We need Smith River, you know, they've lost their store, so we are, as a group, trying to work, you know, and get people, you know, bring their stuff, whatever they have extra.
Well, and that's the way it gets done, is by collaboration, and,
Right.
and I know Eating Healthy, whether through Building Healthy Communities or the Family Resource Center, there's all sorts of
Right.
education going on as well.
Right.
So, thank you.
So we continue, but again, thank you guys very much.
Okay, appreciate it.
You know, just to add to that, though, I mean, it's amazing how big that event has gotten on Saturdays. And I can't say I go every Saturday, but I've been a few Saturdays. That's gotten huge. I mean, the fairground parking lot is full now. Yeah. Well, and then the new one on Front Street, for those of you not aware, on Wednesdays, there's a farmer market on Front Street, and that seems to be expanding quickly also. So we definitely appreciate the collaboration, and it's another event for people to come into town on Saturdays and get some fresh produce and photography and other things that are.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Cool. Thank you.
Ron, before you leave, just a quick question. The schedule for the rest of the summer, when is the last farmer's market? You're running consecutively on Saturdays. When do you terminate?
We both will end in both of the markets, the Saturday market and the downtown, will go through October, rain or shine. Wow. So we are there.
Good. Good to hear. All right, let's get to budget transfers, items 19 through 23, which happens to be budget transfers 0706, 7, 8, and 12.
Move to approve.
And 08, 01.
Second.
Yeah, 09, 010, or 09, 10, and 11 also. They're all on.
Yes, yes. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, any public comment on any of these budget transfers? Bring it back to the board and poll the vote, please.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Sullivan?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Chair Finnegan?
Yes, which brings us to item 27, request to direct the engineering staff to take the following actions. Heidi has regarding Cooper Avenue and the J Street intersection.
Yes, this is an item that's come up at several recent Board of Supervisors meetings where I've been told that, you know, to look into it, and we have done some preliminary work, but what I'm asking for today is formal direction from the board to actually prepare the engineering study that would be needed to, you know, justify whatever warrants making changes at this intersection.
Questions for Heidi? The only question I have, Heidi, is when Art put up that stop sign, was there an engineering study done?
That's what was
Don't
going
know.
to be.
Don't know.
Yeah, it's liable to come out, isn't it? Okay.
Yes, Heidi, I have a couple questions for you on this. This is District 1, and I've polled a number of neighbors. I've walked that area, and they're all very concerned about particularly the way one crosses the street in what I'll guess is a southerly fashion. They're coming up Cooper, and they're trying to get across, and it's more than problematic. I'm not quite sure what the result is, whether there's needing to be a three-way stop there or not, but I would strongly urge you to do your job that you do so well in finding a solution so that people can walk through this area.
Thank you. That is one of the options that our engineering staff has considered, so that will likely be in the information that's returned to you at a later meeting.
Mr. Chair, are you just looking for a direction from the board?
I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to request the engineering division to, number one, prepare the engineering study. So it won't be opinions of supervisors or staff, it will actually be a study. And also to return at a future board meeting with recommendation and alternatives, at which time we will take an action to implement one of those, hopefully. Okay? Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you for following the process and coming back to something that liable is to have some alternatives that everybody won't like. And well, anyway. Consider and take possible action on the request of the County Planning Commission to require mandatory land surveys as a condition of building permit application. Heidi, you up again? I guess you weren't around 18, 19 years ago the first time we talked about this.
I was just beginning. I was probably left at the office when things were happening. Jay was here at that time.
The old dude.
Yeah, I don't know how much you'd like me to go into detail. You have a copy of the board report and then also the 2 memos that were sent to our Planning Commission. Following and after the fact variance, there was a lot of discussion about surveys, need for surveys, and impacts that they have when you have these types of conflicts where someone may build over a property line or within a construction setback. As such, our Planning Commission suggested that we consider a mandatory survey, land survey, a requirement as part of development applications. The memos that I prepared for the Planning Commission describe different scenarios that are in effect in different communities in California and also in Colorado. That was a follow-up request of the Planning Commission to look at what they call setback verification forms. And at the last meeting of our Planning Commission, there was no direction as far as how they would like it to be applied, but they did want it to go forward to the Board of Supervisors for discussion. So in the event that you are interested in this idea, you could provide staff with some input. We would go back, maybe work with County Council, develop a draft ordinance, take it to the Planning Commission, and move it back up the process.
I do appreciate that it was recognized that the policies are set at the board level.
Yes.
Thank you. Who wants to speak to this first? I was referring to board members. Any board member wish to?
Well, Heidi, if you wouldn't mind, I just have a couple of questions on this since it's come to my attention. Are you familiar with the California Parcel Map Law of 1970? Does that ring a bell to you?
I'm familiar with the State Subdivision Map Act.
Well, this law in 1970 requires that all properties in the state have a certified survey on record. So anything after 1970 would, by law, have to have a certified survey on record. That's my understanding. So this would involve properties that were prior to 1970 on a subdivision map. So, and I don't know how many there are, but is this a relatively rare occurrence when you have property line disputes? Is this common? We're talking about putting the survey on all properties in Del Norte County. So what is the issue with regard to the rarity of these occurrences?
Well, I did a 10-year study, the last 10 fiscal years, looking at our planning logbook of projects. I looked at boundary adjustment applications, which are, there are occasions where boundary adjustments are done to correct where construction setbacks aren't met or buildings go over the property line. So I reviewed all of those, and I reviewed the variance applications. Not all variance applications have to do with construction setbacks and so on. So I sorted through those and came up with 15 lot line adjustments that would have fallen under this category and 3 variances. One of which was 2 properties side by side, which I'm going to call 1 variance, which was denied by the board, which later came back as a B combining district rezone, and the issue was solved that way. The other was the recent Baumlin property. In 2 of the 3 situations, there had been recent surveys conducted, and for whatever reason, we ended up with the issue of, something being built where it shouldn't have been built. So if you're asking how frequent this happens, as far as how frequently staff sees it, it's relatively infrequent. I know that Commissioner Jacobs, in his other life as a contractor, he has, informed our planning commission that he sees it happening far more frequently, and I can only
Well, I guess my next
see what
question
happens
would
in
be to
our
county
office.
council about the liability. If the county issues a building permit and on a property that has not been surveyed, does the county assume liability when it comes back into a dispute? So that would be a county council question.
Yes, that is the case, or yes, that can happen, but I do know that in 18, 19 years ago, there was an amendment to the local building ordinance, which is included in the board report, that shows that the responsibility of identifying a lot line in the field is the responsibility of the landowner, that is how we have covered our liability, so to speak. But again, we can have county council look into that as well.
Any other board questions?
I do have, Heidi, unless
Heidi,
you-
don't sit
I
down.
was going to let you sit all the way down and then ask you a question again, but
Thank you.
I am curious how property owners go about saying this is my property line when they do a plot plan and the inspector comes out to make sure that the building is within the setbacks or whatever, and the property owner says, well, my property line is right here and I'm going to be 25 feet from that or whatever it is, and says here's where I'm going to start, and the inspector goes out and says, oh, okay, if that's your property line. Is that the way we do it now?
That's the way it happens, yes.
And so what does that, is there something that helps us in that if there's a survey? I mean, if there's a survey and the property owner says, well, this is my property line and here's my 25 foot.
I mean, if we have a survey and there's a formal verification of that as part of the building permit process, where we could have them go out, have the line, string the line where it is. They could have the surveyor who who prepared the report, potentially even meet the, the building inspector out in the field. I mean, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I guess if you're going to go through all that trouble to have a verification, but I mean, just the survey itself, just to have the survey itself is not going to help in this situation, is it?
I think it would be helpful if you truly don't know where your property line is and you're just assuming that because this fence has been here for so many years.
Right. No,
those types of situations.
I understand all that.
And I don't know how many cases where someone actually built, I mean, on urban-sized lots where you're very constricted because you have a minimum, a narrow lot width, obviously, your proximity to the setbacks are going to be more, important than on the large lots where we don't.
Well, let's go to the Baumlin, because that was pretty recent. Let's go to the Baumlin situation where that was surveyed, and we should have known, I mean, they should have known where the line was, and yet they didn't.
Yeah, I can tell you, in that particular case, what would have been helpful is if the plot plan had been placed on this recorded survey map.
Right.
Because we would have been able to catch that at the staff level before the permit had been issued.
Right.
And that wasn't done, so.
Well, I guess no, sit down. I guess that's my question too, is I mean, how often would you have to renew these surveys, or can a survey 20 years ago count on that property? I mean, and I think I'm leaning toward the same thing Supervisor Hemmingson is. I guess more would be some type of verification would be probably more helpful, at least in the Baumlin case, if somebody had actually verified the lines, or if there's a process we can do without necessarily recreating land surveys and stuff like that. If there's got to be some way of doing that without putting a huge cost on the person building, but also making sure we have some accurate lines.
But in listening to you talk, I think is what you're doing is shifting something we tried to accomplish 20 years ago. You're now shifting the liability back on the county.
Yeah.
So, and for the
But
county to
maybe
go out and say,
yeah.
that's the pin, the property owner is the one that's responsible for the pins. You will find radius pins and survey pins and 2 pins on the same property line because one survey started from one basis point and another started from another basis point, and there's I mean, this is notorious throughout this county. And God help you if you ever got to survey something in a neighborhood and looking for your lines.
I'm doing it right now.
You know, so, but anyway, I guess the case in point really is that the 2 issues, 3 combined, 2 issues, both had surveys.
Yes.
Thank you.
And, you know, and I also went through you could sit down, I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna babble a little bit now, but I went through the planning commission. There was 3 or 4 meetings, I think, where there was discussion, and all of it was good discussion, and points on both sides were very good, but I didn't necessarily see a solution in just having a survey. So either we need to go into a different verification type thing. I don't think the survey is necessarily the end-all, fix-all, you know, in this particular situation.
Before we hear from the public, I think it's what the discussion is probably going to end up coming down to is, who do you want to have the responsibility? Where do you want the liability to fall? On the property owner or the county? Sir, you jumped to your feet, Mr. Public. You might want to clarify whether you're speaking as a member of a commission or a member of the public or a member of the road department or...
Take your pick, actually, all of the above.
Go ahead and identify yourself.
And before we even start, Johnny Jacobs, Bayside Excavation and contractor for 45 years, planning commissioner. And before we start, I'd like to ask county council if it's proper for anyone on the board of supervisors.
Mr. Jacobs, you are out of order. You can address as a public comment the board, which would be me through the board. You may not ask questions of staff, so if you want a question asked of staff, you will ask me and I will ask staff.
You're making profit off of land, and that's a direct conflict.
Do you have a question for the board?
Yes, I want you to ask county council if it's proper for you to be voting on this. If being you asked for me to direct, I'll use you. If it's proper for you, that's dealing in real estate, to be voting or discussing on this. You've jumped my case about abstaining from things to make it proper and follow etiquette. So okay. I need to know.
I'm going to ask you to stick to the topic.
That is the topic, Mr. Finnegan.
Okay. My issue.
You're not God. You need to exempt yourself like the rest of us.
You're done. Sit down.
I'm not sitting down.
We're going to take a recess. You will not address the board like that, sir.
walk out, and they buy a piece of property, as you know, and they'll refer to it as the neighbor says that the line is about here where this fence line is. That's just a representation that no one really knows. But the homeowners often take it as gospel, and they put it down there. And so we're not going for just something that says they have to have a full survey on a thing. It should be an option, because if they have surveys there, they still don't necessarily know that that's where their setbacks is and where they should be putting their property. So the way I stated the thing when I requested it is that it be put so that it could be the homeowner's option. If there's already a survey, that then it would be required that they have a surveyor sign a deal saying the setback. Because then they would know all the different legalities, all the different setbacks, easements, right-of-ways, and everything else, and we wouldn't have a Baumlin situation again.
But how would that be different from what you get when you turn in a building plot plan showing what the
Because we all know
setbacks
that
are
there's
identified?
several different maps that you get. And I've even got surveyor's map that hadn't been updated because new setbacks had been done. So if you have a surveyor, they assume all the responsibility then. It doesn't put nothing on the county. It goes, and it takes it all off of the homeowner too. A licensed surveyor comes in and says, yes, here's your property, and you already have the hubs there, so now I'm going to guarantee this is your setbacks. So it identifies and lays out for everyone where the property is, what the setbacks is, what the right-of-ways is, and everyone stays clear and healthy. As an example, just 2 months ago, the Planning Commission dealt with one that came in from a previous supervisor who had bought a piece of property, put a house on it. And they've been in a 10-year litigation because the house is half on Forest Service property. They just finally got it resolved. Dick Davis mediated the thing for them. They went up and did a survey, traded some property with the Forest Service and realigned it, boundary adjustment, and it finally came to fruition after 10 years, but he spent tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars trying to get this thing accomplished. Whereas if we put this into to place, anyone that gets ready to build, there you go, your mechanism's there. It's automatically a safeguard for the county, the property owner. They can't even hire an attorney as a retainer for what little bit it would cost for a survey. So, but I think they should have the option of whether it's a survey or if it's already been surveyed, then they would be having to get a certification that this is your setbacks.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
Jeff Daniels, homeowner builder, also work for the county, and we already have enough constraints and regulations. We don't need any more. That's it.
Thank you. Next public comment. Anybody else? Okay, back to the board. What's your pleasure? Roger?
I hear what you're saying, Jeff. I don't like these stupid laws like having to put sprinklers in your house when you want to build this one-size-fits-all. I don't like it at all. And I'm not in support of it, but there's clearly an issue here where there's abuse taking place. And there's misunderstandings taking place, and they end up in court costing a lot more money than what I'm proposing would be about a $2,500 fee to have your property certified. I hear you. I think that there is some need of a clarification in the form of either an ordinance or a certification that these are your property lines. In the Baumlin case, it wouldn't have mattered because there was a survey in place and it was ignored. He admitted he used an assessor parcel map, which as a contractor I find that incredulous that he would do that. But there is abuse going on, and I'm concerned about the properties that have not been surveyed prior to 1970 that are abounding in Del Norte County are going to be affected. And I'm trying to find a solution that won't end up being a lawsuit some years down the road for someone like you who wants to expand his house. And maybe the survey would be that insulation level that you would, that layer that you would need when you want to expand your property or build. That's my point. So I think we need some kind of a certification or ordinance in place to require our properties be appropriately surveyed in Del Norte County.
Jerry?
Well, I don't know that we found a solution, and adding $2,500 onto a building permit, if that's what the cost is going to be, I don't think is reasonable in the first place, and I don't think it's the solution. I don't think I've seen a solution yet that's reasonable. I realize that there is an issue, although it doesn't seem to be, that doesn't seem to happen as often, you know, at least that we know about. I mean, there may be instances that we don't know about yet that that are happening out there, and I know there are abuses, and people will continue to abuse regardless of all the regulations. I mean, that happened. So I'm not sure that we found a solution. I would like to see something happen where we can establish these lines, and it would make it very easy for the building inspector to recognize that the building is not being put in the proper place. I just don't see that solution hanging out there by just having a survey done.
I would concur. I don't think the survey, as you mentioned, I think Supervisor Gitlin mentioned there was a survey done on the Baumlin property, and we still ended up in the mess. So I'm willing to consider a solution to it, but I didn't see anything that would have resolved some of the issues that have come up. So you know, at this point, I don't have anything to act on.
I was part of the discussion, not when I was on the board, maybe 20 years ago. And we very carefully, or the county very carefully, crafted the addition to the building ordinance or process to make sure that the responsibility or the liability rested with the property owner, not with the government. And I think we're dancing around that issue of bringing that liability back, or at the very least, passing that liability to somebody else whose property it is not. Just because you have a survey doesn't mean, even if the surveyor did it and on the same day established where the setback should be, doesn't mean that the builder's going to build it there. Doesn't mean he's going to do it properly. So then who's going to be held responsible? Ultimately, it's going to be the property owner. Just because you have a survey or you identify survey pins doesn't mean that's your survey pin. You know, I mean, my perspective from a realtor's point of view is that the realtor never identifies the property corners or boundaries. The property owner does. And any agent that does is crazy, because now you've accepted the liability. I just recently had a sale of a piece of property where we asked to identify the property corners, and the property owner, even though there were 3 pins in the ground, missed his corners and boundaries by 18 feet. So whose responsibility should have that been? And I think that's where I'm coming from. I think we're trying to kill a spider with a sledgehammer. The two real issues, the Baumlin one was called out, Huschnom's was called out. There were surveys on that property, and whether they did or did not know, and I'm not going to get into disparaging any member of the public, whether they knew they were violating the setbacks and were hoping to get away with it, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness type of thing. That goes on a lot. I think when you have property owners that agree as good neighbors that that's where the fence is, and we go in there and require them to do a survey and it's not, now you don't have 2 good neighbors anymore, if there is a change. And like I said before, if you start to, there's a couple of areas. Smith River's one. Fort Dick is notorious. Surveyors went through this community, and one started one end, one started the other, and though they do not correlate when they meet in the middle. I mean, I had a property 30 feet off that the neighbors liked until somebody else pulled the survey. Went right, anyway. The neighborhoods, though, if you had to survey a lot in the city, which the city doesn't have this requirement, or even in the county, whether it's the Filkins tract or the Birch tract, I know what the problems you're going to run into. You're probably going to lose some lots out there. I think we have in the past. So, do we want people to hit their setbacks? Absolutely. Do our inspectors want to get it right? Absolutely. But who ultimately is responsible? And it has to be the property owner. And I think for this, it's crafting an ordinance with an idea of pushing the responsibility off to somebody else, and that I cannot agree with. Ultimately, it has to lie with the property owner.
I did have one other thing to say about pushing that liability off onto the surveyor. Let's say you push that liability off on the surveyor, and that surveyor is no longer in business, and the bonding is not enough to take care of whatever issue there is. Then who does the liability go on? Well, it's going to go on the property owner. So I don't really know that you're gaining anything by trying to push the liability. I have to agree with Chairman Finnegan that the ultimate responsibility lies on the property owner. Even if you have a contractor that's building it and finds where they're supposed to be putting, that's between the contractor and the owner to make sure that that's done in the proper place. So I'm not sure that we've got a cure here for, I'm not sure that we have a huge problem. There certainly are these abuses. They don't come before the board very often. I think we've had 2 since I've been on the board.
Hushnams and Bommelin were the only 2.
Yeah, and the Hushnams was resolved, and the Bommelins was sort of resolved, I guess.
Okay, well, absent a motion and a second, we're going to dismiss this. Is there? No? Okay. Done for hopefully another 20 years. Number 29, review the letter and attachments from the Smith River Rancheria. Jay, that was handled by admin.
It was requested that the letter from Smith River Rancheria be brought forth to the board for discussion. This is a letter that outlined the concerns of the Rancheria over a denied conditional use permit in the Smith River area for a quasi-public use. I bring up the denial because it was denied. There was a 10-day appeal process when there was no appeal filed. So we're not speaking directly to that project as much as the letter, which is a government-to-government letter. The Smith River Rancheria, obviously, in the letter has some misunderstandings of the process that probably need to be cleared up as far as discretionary processes with conditional use permits. Maybe in the future it'll be subdivision or something that requires the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors take action. There were concerns in the letter regarding the, and I'll call it the public process, but it's the public hearing process, and also included what I believe was misunderstanding of what the flyers were quoted in the letter, which are likely the public hearing notices that are required by our ordinance. There's 300-foot notices, there's notices in the paper, and there's notices posted on the property. So I think that based on what I saw in the letter and bringing back to the board for discussion was that the process itself was misunderstood in a number of steps. There were questions about the public testimony. There was a question about the testimony of a commissioner in regards to speaking about moving it to different properties. The primary focus, I think, at this point, this would be my recommendation to the board, if asked, would be to sit down with planning staff, maybe go over our outreach to applicants, our outreach in this case to applicants that may be other governments also, as well as the Planning Commission, just to make sure the process is very clear, that people understand that there are ordinances in place. I believe the Planning Department does a very good job of explaining that. I've heard that from the public, but it's a process that can be a little bit complicated if you don't do it very often, and a misunderstanding of what happens. I think with some communication can be fixed.
I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but so perhaps what were you talking about here? You'd like to be directed to do a workshop, or you would like to be not just for the public or for applicants, but also for the Planning Commission?
Well, I think that at
about
this
what's
point,
appropriate and what's not when focusing.
And I would like to sit down with Heidi Kunstl and talk to her and Randy also, because they're the two that are most instrumental in the public hearing process in CDD, and just see what they see also. Obviously, this is my view of it from the outside. I wasn't at the meeting. I haven't been at the Planning Commission meetings to see how it's been dealt with any of the other applicants that have come through. But based on my reading of the letter, and obviously the board can give me direction from there, I'd like to sit down with planning staff, kind of go over those, see if maybe we can refine that do some outreach. Obviously, we have a 2x2 with Smith River. We can do that with Smith River, Elk Valley, the Urox. All of that can be done through communication, but it's the public process is not necessarily the process that the tribes follow.
Correct.
They have a different way of making their decisions. There are obligations of the Planning Commission in regards to how they make those decisions and how they look at each individual project. And so maybe just going over all of that and coming back with some recommendations to the Planning Commission or just the outreach to the public.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this?
Jay, so there is no official appeal from the unanimous, I think it was a 4-0 vote from the Planning Commission meeting of July 2nd. There hasn't been no official, we want the Board of Supervisors to hear this application for conditional use permit.
Correct. And what we're talking about today is a letter submitted by the Smith River Rancheria that took exception to what I see as the process.
Okay. So the next step would be, I suggested, would be the 2x2 meeting with the Rancheria to discuss the differences.
My recommendation would be for me to meet with the planning staff and the director, and the 2x2 process after that, once we have our discussion.
That's reasonable. That's good.
What they believe, you know, what needs to be clarified.
Actually, it'd be nice if you guys met with the staff from Smith River Rancheria. That, to me, would be more helpful in going right to a 2x2, you know. Because I'm sure they rely on their staff for a lot of applications process and other projects out there, so.
I would agree. I think unfortunately in this one, they didn't have somebody there that was available to answer the questions on the side of the applicant. And so that didn't help the situation overall.
And, you know, just, I didn't know much about this project before I actually didn't know anything about this project before I saw it come to us. And what I saw is the Smith River Rancheria didn't promote their project very well. It didn't appear, and get a sense of what the community felt like. And it looked to me like in the process, the public didn't like it. And that's why you go through that use permit process, I think, is when you have to apply for a permit for a use that, you know, that it's not zoned for, that the public kind of needs to go along with it. And it doesn't look like it was promoted well enough for the public to go along with it. So it looked to me like the process, the way it's set up, was working. You know, and there may be some other underlying issues as far as how we get to that point, you know, between the understanding between the Rancheria and the county process. But, and those can be, like you say, worked out. It looks like you're going in that direction.
Well, I think that anytime you could give a little more clarity to the process, you know, I know Randy and Heidi do an excellent job of explaining these projects, but if you're not involved in that all the time, it can get complicated. Now, the public process is that there's a responsibility of the Planning Commission to make an ultimate decision that could be appealable to the board. People need to go into that process understanding that, you know, in this case, Mr. Hooper had a recommendation of approval, but the final decision is with the Planning Commission, and it isn't a done deal until that's done or the appeal is done. So there are steps that need to be explained.
Public comment?
I live in the greater Smith River community, and I'm not involved in the past politics that's gone on between the tribe and the community in the past. There's a lot of miscommunications, a lot of animosity, but I would like to see if we could get a citizen representative to any meetings, just as an observer status, so that we could, you know, at least be kept up to date in the community as to what's, you know, what the discussions are, instead of being left out like we were kind of like last time. So is that possible? Is that possible?
I'm not sure what meeting you're talking about.
Well, they were talking
Commission
about
meeting?
this 2-on-2 between.
Oh, that's government to government, yeah.
Government to government. Can we get an official observer status, just to be up to date, and so we don't have to hear about things third and fourth party?
Well, I'm going to have to defer on that one. I guess it would be up to the two governments that we're meeting. It's the type of action that doesn't, there's a disagreement whether it falls under the Brown Act or not. because it only involves two, and no decision can be made, some think that it doesn't fall under the Brown Act. And because there's only two, even if it's going to lead to an action taken later, you only had two, so it's still not a violation of the Brown Act unless one of those two shares with somebody else. I think I take it under advisement.
You know, I'm not even thinking of the Brown Act, I'm just thinking of respect for the
Well,
neighborhood.
the Brown Act is open meeting law.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I'm just saying that it would be nice if we could have, you know, at least be involved in the process a little bit more than.
Some of the
getting
discussions are sensitive. I think that if we're talking about community planning, there has to be a process where I think the community is involved, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And I think we can work towards that, and maybe at the 2x2 they can bring that up.
May I ask a question to clarify?
Yes.
Are you speaking more to the project or the letter that was submitted?
You know, I'm kind of speaking to the project and to other projects that are going to start happening. You know, the area is changing.
I thought it was a more in general, was your comment. Do you want to know what's...
Well, you know, we would like to know what's going to go on with this project especially, you know, because it's in a strictly residential area.
At the very least, it sounds like at the 2x2, they should encourage the rancheria to have more of an open community forum.
Something, so that we're not, I mean, a lot of people, you know, got word, the word got one of those telephone chains, you know, where all of a sudden everybody just got on the, you know, out of control about it. And, you know, if we could stop these misunderstandings before they start, you know, we want to work with the tribe. You know, we feel we got left out of the loop until the last minute, so.
Well, I don't know when our next 2x2 is, but we can,
Thank you.
we can bring it
Thank you.
up within the meeting about just, you know, making sure that we've got some community involvement process. I don't think
I'm not
anything-
sure the 2x2, you know, I mean, there's going to be a lot of other stuff that's going to be talked about, not just that particular thing. It looks to me like if you would keep track of what's going on at the Planning Commission when the application goes to the Planning Commission, that you would be in the loop at that point, and you would know everything that's going on. You would know everything that we know.
Well, and that's why the flyers were sent out to notify people of, because there's a change in that.
Well, those are just regular postings that happen.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Well, I mean, that's the legal process of, they're required to do it, so it's.
Mr. Roberts mentioned that, you know, they'd like to be aware more quickly regarding these projects, and what I was just talking about Heidi
So
is.
would we.
That's a
Thank you.
point the point that I'll make is that in the case of these projects that come to the planning department and then onto the planning commission, the process worked exactly how it was supposed to work, in that the public hearing notices went out. He mentioned it went through the phone, you know, the people that were concerned talked. That's the process that's out there. For projects themselves, from being the old planner that was here 18 or 19 years ago too, that brought that other one forward, that's the process. And I don't, you know, as far as the 2x2, we could certainly talk with the rancheria about, you know, public forums and those types of things. But for the individual projects, it actually worked.
Public?
Thank you. I don't want to duplicate anything that was said here today, Chair Finnegan, but I do want to encourage this open dialogue that we see here amongst the board and what the county is encouraging right now with staff. I think this would have solved a tremendous amount of concerns that were raised by the community that showed up from Smith River and expressed those concerns to the Planning Commission. You know, I followed up myself with Chair Brendine Miller specific to this conversation. I know there was a lot of hurt feelings. I encouraged her to continue conversations and not pull out of Smith River. I think it's extremely important that Smith River continue to engage with the community and, more importantly, continue to build within the Smith River community and make it a more attractive place to be. But there was definitely a breakdown in communications, and that was very clear as expressed to the County Planning Commission, and unfortunately they just didn't have somebody that was very prepared at the time to help calm or ease the community's fears. But I do want to set it straight from the Planning Commission standpoint. On the number of years that I've been there, we have never once not supported a rancheria project, whether it was Smith River, Elk Valley, Rezagini, or the Yurok tribe. We've always been extremely supportive of tribal projects that have come through this community. And unfortunately, you have black and white documents that come before you. You don't have the ability to sit there and hear the discussions that take place, but there was no demeaning or derogatory type language that came from anybody on the planning commission, specifically to the tribal representatives. Those black and white tones unfortunately don't convey that, but there was no derogatory action meant or said during those meetings. I just wanted that clarified. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so it sounds like a couple of things that might fall under direction, but I think the real direction is to get together with Planning Commission and, with Heidi, the Director of Community Development, and Randy as a planner, and administration, and talk about the process. If they're, I know that it was incumbent upon them, and I don't mean to keep coming back to this specific project, although the letter triggered it, but for any project, the people need to better understand that it's incumbent upon the person applying to present their case, no matter what the recommendation from staff is. If you don't present your case and you don't show up, then you run the risk of having opposition. Also, applicants to understand, look, nobody, the process is that we have to notify people within so many feet of the project. I would take it a step further, and Chairman Howard, I like that it's hard to get tone and inflection out of black and white, right? But it has been a long time, if ever. I know I was fortunate to have one of my commissioners on the Planning Commission for 18 years, 17 years, and you develop knowledge through that. But even as supervisors, whether you want to listen or not, there's a new Supervisors Institute put on by CSAC that gives you some hints on how to do things. And maybe it would be good to start that policy with our commissions as well and talk about, at staff level, some sort of a workshop with the Planning Commission as to how, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what are you focusing on. You are an arm of the Board of Supervisors, a representative of the county, and so how do we put that in the proper light? And give that some consideration when you're having your discussions too. Might not be a bad idea. Anything else?
I have one other little thing. It appears as though our monitors are not working up here except Supervisor Sullivan's. Was yours working?
Yeah, mine's on.
Mine's not.
And so we had no, again, this is I think the second meeting in a row or that we had no monitors for the PowerPoint presentation for Supervisor Gitlin and Chair Finnegan and myself, and Supervisor Sullivan gets, because he's a lame duck, gets singled out and is able to watch all the presentations, and we don't get to. So if IT's listening.
One other issue, consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the County of Del Norte. Authorize chair to sign any letters, anything like that. Stay tuned, legislature's at it again.
Yeah, no letters right now. We are continually looking at the water bond and any changes that come with it, as well as the groundwater legislation. Okay. Those two are going back and forth.
Yeah, the next couple of weeks are going to be critical. The only other thing is I had a misnomer. I told Supervisor Hemmingson he was reading number 14 when actually it was number 8, but there was an item number 14, which was proclamation of a local emergency. Rather than reading the whole document, the revised document that we already voted on, that's a page and a half long, do you want to address the issue?
Well, I guess we could have. I didn't want to, I appreciate David Palmer coming in from the Forest Service. I don't know how many times in the last 8 years Mary Kay addressed this board, but I'm pretty sure it's not a handful. And I didn't want to throw him off by telling how bad everything is, because we do, Supervisor Sullivan and I do have a meeting with them on next Tuesday. We're going to go on a little field trip, and the new forest supervisor will be along also. So we'll have some good conversation there. And we do have an issue in the forest. There are fires all around us. It's just a matter of time. They do need to take care of managing their property, and that's basically what the resolution says, is that as a county, we need to basically, we are in a state of emergency that could catch on fire at any time and be devastating. So,
well, I think to dovetail to what you're saying, I think we all hear on the news about the lack of water in Southern California and some parts of the Bay Area, but the issue up here is we've got potential for a major forest fire because they're not managing their forest, which means they need to go through and thin some of the forest out, or at least pick up the stuff off the ground.
And as I alluded to when I talked to Mr. Palmer about a project every 8 years of a couple thousand acres, is not going to get it done. I mean, it's not going to help us.
And your rhetorical question about Hurdy-Gurdy Creek, the answer, as we both know, is I'm sorry, it can't be done because it's not in the management plan, and the management plan is nowhere on the horizon.
But that was a high priority fire thing. That's why they purchased it.
All right, meeting adjourned. See you next time.